Good evening. Welcome to the Jamie Glazov Show. Our guest this evening, once again, back by popular demand, Eric Allen Bell, a regular blogger for the Daily Kos, where he was recently banned for the crime of writing 3 articles that ran afoul of the mindset there, because he specifically named loonwatch.com as a terrorist spin control network. He also told the truth about Islam. He is currently producing a documentary entitled Not Welcome that is about the backlash against construction of a 53,000 square foot mega mosque in America's Bible Belt. He has told his story in his front page article, which went viral around the world, The High Price of Telling the Truth About Islam. Also, don't miss Eric Bell on Front Page's television program, The Glazov Gang, and you can go to frontpagemag.com and see those shows and that article and other articles by Eric Allen Bell. We were supposed to be joined by Robert Spencer this evening, but Robert Spencer's not feeling well. He has a little cold, so he had to take a pass. So we are privileged to be with Eric Allen Bell the full hour. Eric, welcome back to the Jamie Glazov Show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's see what the studio audience, what kind of mood they're in by having Eric Allen Bell back on the show. Okay, well, I think that's a very favorable response, Eric.
No, if you listen very carefully in Arabic, they're saying death to America.
Eric, for the sake of our listeners, some of them might be new. Before we get into some of our big issues, tell us, just give us once again a replay quickly of what happened to you at the Daily Kos and your, maybe we can call it, awakening.
Well, briefly, I set out to make a documentary about, as you had described, the building of a mega mosque in America's Bible Belt, while simultaneously writing for a number of liberal blogs, primarily the Daily Kos. I had used my access to that audience there to try to get some facts out about the radicalization within Islam that seems to be accelerating and what many people are referring to as the Islamist winter, and a concern I had within the American media that a lot of these islamophobia watchdog sites such as loonwatch.com were conning people. Were really designed to create something of a smokescreen, or the word choice I had used is a terrorist spin control network. So I'd written 3 articles, really I think making a good solid case, and was fired from Daily Kos. I would add that on loonwatch.com they created a link for people to write into the editors of Daily Kos demanding that I be removed from Daily Kos, and I was removed.
Your thoughts on it?
Well, I find it very disconcerting because, within, for all 3 of those articles, there are hundreds of comments and no diversity of opinion. I mean, it's disappointing that there just was countless accusations of being a hate monger, fear monger, Islamophobe, right winger, bigot. And I didn't feel like anybody actually read the article. Just simply being critical of Islam or radical Islam was enough to say, you're an Islamophobe, I'm not going to listen to you. So that tells me how deeply organizations like CARE, loonwatch.com, and several others have infiltrated into the psyche of the American consciousness. They've really made this myth of Islamophobia, the irrational fear of Islam, into a reality that people actually believe and abide by.
Eric, tell us a little bit about quote-unquote Islamophobia and, perhaps what you thought of that term earlier on and what you think about it today.
Well, I think, when the liberal community is at its best, it tries to side with the underdog. And the perception has been that Muslims in America are getting a raw deal, being persecuted and singled out. So a lot of people have a very difficult time separating in their minds the difference between a Muslim, who I have no problem with Muslims, and Islam. So a Muslim is a person, Islam is a belief system. So I think what has happened is that people have developed this belief that if you criticize Islam, you're criticizing Muslims, and so that's one component. The other component in our Judeo-Christian society is we tend to think all religions are sort of equal. You know, love your neighbor and treat your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's actually not true in Islam. That's an incorrect assumption people make. So they think, you know, to each his own. That's their religion. They want to believe whatever they want to believe. Why do you care? Well, their beliefs are not based on things like love your neighbor. There's no right and wrong in Islam. There's obedience and disobedience. There's what's commanded and there's what's forbidden. So it's my belief, after quite a bit of research on this, Islam is inherently violent. Fortunately, most Muslims aren't violent, but the belief system itself is. It's shockingly violent and absolutely nothing like Christianity and Judaism. And I say that as a person who does not believe in a deity and really not a fan of religion at all, but there's a world of difference between Islam and Christianity.
Eric, we have some Trojan horses on our soil, you know, in terms of loonwatch.com, their behavior, in terms of CARE. Can you speak a little bit about loonwatch.com and CARE and even their dance with one another?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it all goes back to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood has numerous front organizations. Anyone can do their own research and find this out. You know, an example would be the Muslim Student Association. Another is the Council on Islamic American Relations, CARE. There was something called the Holy Land Foundation, which was, at the time, in, I believe, Irving, Texas, the largest Islamic charity in the United States. And they were caught funneling monies to Islamic terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. CARE was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. To the best of my knowledge, that was so that the prosecutors could use evidence without having to get tangled up in trying to fight CARE. So it's pretty clear. There are tape recordings. These are available to the public. CARE was developed by the Muslim Brotherhood to put a nice face on Islam for Americans and to also, I think, start to police the media. The most recent example would be what happened a couple weeks ago in New York City. The NYPD was using as a training manual or a training film documentary called The Third Jihad. And CARE came out and said, this is Islamophobic, and the head of the NYPD should be fired. Well, the NYPD immediately pulled the video and issued an apology. The video is narrated by a devout Muslim who's concerned about jihad. There is nothing Islamophobic in this video. So so CARE issues a press release, and the New York Times writes an article that's almost verbatim, word for word, the CARE press release. Huffington Post follows suit, and a number of other liberal blogs all say, isn't this just outrageous? The NYPD are a bunch of Islamophobes. And so CARE has created this narrative, this reality that actually isn't true. And I think that's very concerning because the radical Islamic element is not, in my view, trying to invade the country so much in terms of, let's say, birth rates or Sharia law. I think it's through the media. That's my main concern, is to get the media to sort of willfully police themselves and censor themselves, and it's working. It's working really well.
Well, the media, our mainstream media, is definitely not welcoming to the truth about adversarial cultures and adversarial religions. And, you stumbled onto some of the truths about Islam. And we want to emphasize, that, what you're saying, what Robert Spencer's saying, what I say, what Nani Darwish says we're simply just repeating what Islam teaches. We're repeating what's in Islamic texts and in Islamic theology. And the left is not welcoming of this. And I want to ask you about this. Tell us a few things that you have discovered about Islam in terms of what you've been researching lately. And then I want to get to why the culture, which is dominated by the left, really, really does not want to hear this or is concerned.
Well, I think the most important thing to know about Islam is that Muhammad, its founder, in the 600s, created Islam and is considered the ideal man in Islam, the person to emulate. The way he spread his religion is not that much different from how Osama bin Laden behaved when he was living. He ordered countless beheadings, torture, stoning of women for adultery. He raped a 9-year-old girl. So this is the ideal man in Islam. And I think that really, what more do you need to know about Islam?
And yet, when you speak to liberals, when you speak to leftists, they think that you're actually being offensive, and they don't want to hear what you're saying because to them this is not appropriate. But it's simply the truth. Another thing I've noticed.
Misconception, I wouldn't say that it's just that they just don't want to hear it. It's that if somebody grew up in a Judeo-Christian society, we just assume because, let's say, the Bible has an Old Testament and New Testament and went through Reformation, Enlightenment, and so forth, the assumption is that that's old-fashioned stuff that's not relevant anymore. So if you crack open the Bible and you read the book of Leviticus and it says if your child talks back to you, stone him, I don't think any of us know any Christians or Jews that actually do that. If you look at the over 100 references in the Quran that say kill the infidel, just a daily glance at the headlines and say Al Jazeera, you'll see there's a pattern. I think the estimate is something north of 18,000 deadly Islamic terrorist attacks in the last 10 years. So, I mean, it says to do that in the Quran. It quite literally says terrorize the unbeliever, and, of course, that's exactly what's happening. So the misconception, I think, is that Islam has somehow entered the modern age, and it may have in patches of America, but I'd say globally it has by no means entered the modern age. In fact, what I find so disconcerting seems to be going backwards. There's a radicalization. Yeah,
absolutely. What I want to add is that, people, what my emphasis is that the left has taken over the culture, and the leftist belief system is that you cannot put other cultures down. I mean, just think of this. Imagine just to say, we are a superior civilization. The West is superior. Islam is inferior.
Right.
America is superior. Christianity is superior as a religion to Islam. Judaism is a superior religion to Islam. This is just anathema to the liberal mindset, because the leftist mindset is that all cultures and religions are equal, and they are so ashamed of their own civilization that this dominates our culture. This dominates the media. So when they hear people start saying this, what you're saying, what Spencer has said for years, they recoil from this because they like their identity. They're open-minded, and they're very open-minded towards other cultures, and they would never say anything negative about other cultures. So
there's that, and it also just, I'm Generation X, so what we would call political correctness was just sort of built into the educational system when I came up. So to me, a year ago, Robert Spencer sounded like hate speech to me.
Yeah.
Now, when I really took a step back and realized the guy's just citing facts from history.
And not just citing with facts, but in the end, we are the humanitarians, and it is the left that is anti-humanitarian. Because, Eric, if we care about Muslim girls, if we care about Muslim women that are the victims of forced marriage and forced veiling and female genital mutilation and honor killings, if we care about those human beings, and the way we help those human beings is to expose the evil ideology that persecutes them, that's true humanitarianism. And the left doesn't care about the victims of Islam because its multiculturalism trumps human rights.
Well, there's an interesting thing here. I think we have to make a distinction. You know, there are, let's say within America, Muslims who are just moderate, well-meaning people who are Muslims and probably don't know that much about Islam. And I would say within what you're calling the left, which strikes me as a very broad term, there are just liberals, and then there are people who are really far radical left. So I don't know that there's this big group just simply called the left that's somehow against America. I think that the intentions amongst the more moderate liberal people, which would be the majority, I think they have good intentions, and the sentiment is right, you know, to accept other cultures. They're just naive, and that is the problem. It's just simply miseducated on this subject.
Eric, we can't agree and won't agree on everything. I very much disagree. I believe that the left is not ruled by or marked by naivete, but by a destructive intent. But we'll perhaps expand on that argument at another time. But the key is that a lot of this mentality shapes our media, and it explains in part why at a place like the Daily Kos, where this kind of totalitarianism exists on thought, of why they were not able to digest your truth-telling, correct?
Right, yeah. But, you know, again, I don't think it's that it was it's just the knee-jerk reaction at face value was you hate Islam, you hate Muslims, you're a bigot, and that was it, you know. So I would say, you know, the flip side of that, within Occupy Wall Street, you do have people who simply hate America and are communists and socialists and do fit all the stereotypes of doing drugs in a tent in the park. That said, that's not everybody in Occupy Wall Street. You have libertarians. You have people who think the problem is that the government's too big and not that you need to tax the rich. So it's easy there for one to make a quick knee-jerk reaction. So I think it's a human quality. I don't, at least in my mind, I can't say, well, that's the left. I'd say human beings are prone to make quick knee-jerk reactions based on our biases.
I think, you know, I just to clarify, crystallize what I'm saying is that when people say, "Oh, there's not a left," because it's not everyone. I've dealt with that my whole life. When David Horowitz, I myself have tried to crystallize what the left is and the damage it's done. One of the arguments by liberals is, "Oh, it's not everybody. You know, it's not everybody. You're painting everybody with a very broad brush." But that's not the answer. It's a given that lots of people are different and not everybody abides to this or that. But the analogy I would use is if the Nazis are putting Jews into concentration camps, and if there's people trying to say, look what Nazism is doing, look at who's being put into concentration camps, people coming forward that would start saying, but not all Nazis do that. No, that is not helpful at this particular moment. It is obvious that not all Nazis are participating in it, but let us be honest about the Nazi ideology and the damage it is inflicting. And the left is an ideology, and it has inflicted mass damage on this society. And its belief system that you cannot criticize adversarial cultures and religions is severely damaging our ability right now to defend ourselves against Islamic Jihad.
Well, I have to agree with you there. That I do agree with. But that said, I think it's incumbent upon those of us who are in the counter-jihad movement, and I must say, within that movement, for the short period of time I've been involved with it, there's diversity, as you can see. Not everybody's singing off the same sheet of music. There's room for a lot of diverse points of view within that movement, which is, I don't see that so much in the left. But I would say it is really incumbent upon us to get the message out there. We see what we're up against. We see that people aren't going to hear it, and which means that we just have to try better, and we just need to be more effective in getting this message out.
Well, look, having said what I said, of course there's truth to what you're saying, Eric, because look what happened to you. So if you existed and you have good intentions and you ran into the truth and start pursuing it, then you're a testament to the fact that there's many more liberals and leftists out there that, as you're saying, can be reached. And, a person like you is one of our hopes to reach them.
Right.
And
I
perhaps
think it's hard to reach anybody. It's easier to reach people when you can say, I once thought like you too. As opposed to, shame on you, you just want the terrorists to win. You know what I mean? So I don't know if Bill O'Reilly's going to reach people with this message, but I think that an understanding of where people are coming from with this multiculturalism that's built into our collective psyche in America, to understand it helps to be able to speak to it.
Absolutely. Eric Allen Bell, you have many, many admirers, but you also have critics from all sides. You have some liberals that don't like what you've done. I'm sure you have some Muslims that don't like the transition. And they're all listening, I think, right now. We've got some Loon Watch people listening to this radio show. We've got some Daily Kos people listening, some front page readers, and I encourage all of them to dial 347-857-1380 to speak to Eric Allen Bell. And those of you that don't like Eric, stop trash talking and doing a lot of smack talking and call in and face him and say what you really think face to face. We have Stephen calling from Toronto, Canada. Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I am. How you doing, Jamie?
Thank you very much for calling the Jamie Glazov Show. You have a question or a comment?
Yeah, what I haven't heard talked about is security for America. These large numbers of Muslims we're bringing in, have we learned nothing from Europe? Have we learned nothing from Lebanon? Europe, France, to rise 2005. The French government almost had to send an army into the Paris suburbs. I've talked to a Jordanian Christian. I've talked to a Lebanese Christian. They said, whatever you do not allow Muslim immigration, huge numbers to build up. They said, when you do, you're going to have huge problems. They said, it's not a question of constitution or human rights. It's simply a question of security for the country. So is this a good thing that we're allowing such huge immigration into the United States? Like Noni Darwish said on one of your previous shows, they're heading for Muslim immigration. They're heading for the South and to the Bible Belt and to Alaska. And she thinks there's some type of invisible hand controlling this. Is this good for the future of America?
Stephen, before I let Eric go, look, completely politically incorrect answer, but we know what the truth is. It is not healthy for the security of America. And look what happened in Europe. We've got suburbs in Paris now where non-Muslim women have to veil, otherwise they'll get gang raped. And this is completely connected with immigration. But having said that, Stephen, what are you implying? We're in trouble, and those of us that want to face the facts know that Muslim immigration is a problem. But how we as a free society that believe in equality and liberty and all that stuff, are you saying that we create a system where Muslims are not welcome and cannot immigrate here, or there would have to be a screening process like they say in Denmark and some of the countries? They've actually started saying that if you believe in Sharia, and they show some videos of naked people on beaches and stuff, and they tell them, if this isn't for you, don't come here. What can we do as a free society? Are you implying, what do you personally support doing?
Well, Saraš Trifkovic, a Serbian journalist who's writes also in the United States, he wrote a book called Defeating Jihad, and he's the first thing you do is cut off Muslim immigration and screen them very carefully, the Muslims you do let in. Now, he said they build up numbers first, just like this Lebanese Christian, Jordanian Christian said, and then then you have massive security problems in your country. Now, we've done this before in the past in America, and also in Canada. During the Second World War, when security was an issue, the Japanese Americans, Japanese Canadians were interned. Lincoln, during the Civil War, he also interned all his opponents for the duration of the Civil War. So when it comes to security of countries, I think we have the right to do this. You do have to set aside certain laws and human rights in order to preserve the laws and human rights, to preserve this.
Okay, just a second, Stephen. Now, in the beginning of your call, I sensed an implication that perhaps you were being critical of Eric. Please tell me if you think that you don't think Eric is stressing those themes enough. And for instance, I'll ask you, Eric is very much supportive of the right to build mosques in America. How do you include that in some of your warnings right now?
Well, I think like Noni Darwish said on the Glazov gang, he said these places are simply headquarters for worldwide jihad. That's what she implied, and it's like that in all a lot of these countries. We even use them as fortresses to shoot at people.
So what are you saying?
Well, I'm saying it's not a good idea. I'm saying it's not a good, especially we don't know where the funding's from. Why are they building these huge mosques when we don't have the people? We have to look 50 years down the road.
Laws. Wait, so are you supporting laws in the United States that prohibit the building of mosques?
No. I'm supporting laws that screen immigration, cut down immigration.
Okay, Eric, go ahead.
And that one will follow the other. Then you won't have the mosques.
Well, okay, just a sec. Okay, Eric, what do you think of what's been said?
Well, there's two pieces. So let's start with the easy part, which is the part I agree with. They have a big problem in Europe that I don't think the caller overstated. It really is true.
Well, they're on the verge of civil war.
With the problem in Europe. On the American side, I have to say I totally disagree completely. Should we have tougher immigration laws, generally speaking? I think so. I think we have some, I'm in Southern California here. We, it's very difficult to find people who speak English. The state of California just, is having its back broken financially. We have too much illegal immigration, and the solution to that is simply enforce the laws that are already in the books. As far as singling out one group like Muslims, America is not Europe. America is a wild card. America
but Eric,
is a
look 50 years down the road,
unlike what the world has ever seen before.
Look 50 years down the road.
The way they do it there. Pardon me?
Look 50 years down the road, like Europe in '61, when they started letting the Muslims in.
We don't arrest people in
now they're on the
America
verge
for
of
what you
civil
might
war
do
in
in
these
50
countries.
years. So, there's a difference between speculating, which I think is worthwhile.
No, we've seen in Europe it's a reality.
Saying, well, we just know what they're going to do. We just know.
But in Europe, it's a reality. 50 years ago, they started letting the Muslims in, and now in Paris, like I said, they almost had to send the army in. And other countries, there's a book that came out in 2010 in France saying the French government's preparing for urban warfare.
Right. But my point to you would be that the culture in the United States is very different from that of France or that of Britain. First of all, just if you look at birth rates, okay, so let's say that there's some sinister plot on the part of Muslims to get into America and make as many babies as possible. And the fact is, it's not that easy to get into America. It's a very expensive place to live. It's expensive to have a whole lot of babies. And we don't have the birth rates presently in America of Muslims that you're seeing in Europe. So you're kind of comparing apples and oranges. America is very different culturally from Europe. So
well,
my sense is that when we start compromising our laws in this country and we say, well, let's single out one ethnic group or single out one religion, if we start singling out one religion and treating them differently, we violated the First Amendment.
But we're not.
So we're starting to compromise our own principles.
We're singling out a political ideology, and the ideology of jihad. The culture of jihad is not different in Europe than in the United States.
It's not against the law in the United States, let's say, to be communist.
Jihad is not against the law in the United States? Have you
well,
belonged
there's
to
a
a
difference
radical...
between, let's be clear about the difference between a belief system and actions. So somebody can have a really wacky belief system, and that's legal in America. They can even talk about it, and it's legal. Actions, we have laws in the books. It's against the law to go blow yourself up. It's against the law to commit acts of terrorism. We already have laws on the books. We don't need new laws. I think, if anything, what we need overall in this country is less government and fewer laws. So I think we don't want to start instituting the thought police. People can say whatever wacky thing they want. That's legal in the United States. It's when they start taking actions that we need to be concerned. And I'm not really aware of a whole lot of mosques that are firing guns out the windows at people when they walk by.
But wait a minute, Eric. When you say until, playing the devil's advocate here, what if it's too late by the time when you're saying let's wait till this? But how can we wait if there are people following a political ideology that want to set off a weapon of mass destruction or engage? Why are we waiting for more 9/11s when we already know the threat?
Well, I don't think we're talking about waiting for another 9/11. An act of jihad, since 9/11, in the last 10 years there have been some acts of Islamic terrorism in the United States, but they're few and far between. So for the most part, our Department of Homeland Security is doing a pretty good job using the laws that already exist. I'm not a big fan of the Patriot Act, but I must admit, we're not really having a lot of acts of jihad in the United States in the last 10 years. So obviously, you don't want to wait for it to get really bad, but I think to start saying, well, we just know what you're going to do, so we're going to have special laws for people of this religion, that violates the First Amendment.
1 second. So, Steve, what you're also saying is some liberties or amendments or whatever have to be sacrificed in a time of war. Or go ahead, Steve. Get a point in before
Sure,
we
they
go
declared
call.
Radical Islam has declared war against us. We have to enact laws like during the Second World War, like Lincoln did, put laws aside during the Civil War.
It's just simply not true, though. What you're saying.
It's not just the radical. It's also the cultural part of it. Europe now has parallel justice systems. Germany, England, Belgium, and they're simply ignoring the constitutions of these countries. They're simply ignoring the laws. And
one second. So,
now,
gentlemen,
I'm just saying,
Bruce Bauer wrote a book while Europe slept, and Europe slept and allowed this. Steve, your argument in some ways is that Eric perhaps is naive, that people, that America is going to sleep and then this is going to pop out of the blue and we'll be enslaved.
They're not looking 50 years down the road. Europe didn't look 50 years down the road in 1961. And look at the state Europe's in now. Look at the state.
Right.
Like I said, France came very close to civil war, having sent the army into the Paris suburbs in 2005.
Okay, 1 second. Steve, do you think America is asleep the way Europe was asleep?
Yeah, in some respects I do.
Okay, Eric, go ahead.
No, absolutely not. We have more freedom of speech in America, generally speaking, than they do in Europe. There are things we said on this radio show that if we were in Europe, we might have already committed a hate crime just by expressing our opinions.
But
so
Eric, wait a minute.
Freedom of speech protects.
But Eric, wait a minute.
Way.
This is not CNN. This is not the mainstream media. And you also know that the Obama administration and there are forces out there that are working to prohibit anything that's regarded as a criticism of Islam.
Right. Agreed.
You also gave a criticism yourself on the show this evening about the example of the New York Police Department being criticized for using a video. I mean, this is censorship. This is and don't tell me that this is an agenda and it's not being advanced, and it's advancing still.
It's a very serious concern. I think we're all in agreement that there's a serious threat.
What Eric is saying
is how to handle it.
Steve, wait a minute. How would you handle?
Can I just ask one more question?
Wait a minute. Stephen, 1 second. What Eric is saying is it is much more dangerous, arguably, to throw the First Amendment into the garbage, to start picking on one religion, that this is un-American. Aren't you concerned by that if you love the liberty of the United States?
No, because it's such a situation. I look at what happened in Lebanon, Southern Sudan, France, Germany, England now.
But Eric keeps telling you this is not Lebanon. This is not Europe.
Well, not yet. Like I said, where do you see
We're
America
totally
in 50
different
years?
cultures. There is no not yet. It's apples and oranges. The culture of America can only be found in one place on this planet, and it's the United States. It is a social experiment. It's new, and there's no other place like it anywhere else.
Okay, 1 second. Steve, go ahead and make a point. We'll go to a call.
Listen, if you can get the New York Times has already taken the care verbatim, their press releases. If they can get, who was fired in New York police force? Who was fired? Was someone fired for using a video?
He has not been fired. CARE was calling for the fire of.
Okay,
I believe
but even
we're
at that level, we're even at that stage now.
if you're at that
Right.
stage now, like I said, look at it 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
Well, look at Fort Hood. We had a doctor that was actually saying that unbelievers should have acid thrown down their throats, poured down their throats, Nidal Hassan, and people were too scared to complain about him.
Yeah.
But what do we do about that? That's the issue. I think we all agree on the threat, but what can we do about it? Eric is on the side of maintaining the beauty of American liberty and freedom of speech. Steve, you're saying that some of it has to be sacrificed because the situation is so dire.
Temporarily.
We are going to go
I'm
to...
not just saying maintaining beauty because that does sound a little passive. I think we have a war of ideas, and we need to identify where that battlefield is taking place, which is the media. And we need to present a superior argument, and we need to win that war of ideas in a civilized and rational way that doesn't compromise our civil liberties or the civil liberties of other Americans.
Oh, and okay, Steve, stay there.
Okay.
And regroup and get some of your verbal artillery ready. We're going to go to Jordan from California. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I've been here.
What do you think about the debate occurring on the show before we get to why you called?
Well, I think that with regards to whether we're sleeping like Europe slept, there's a book by Christopher Caldwell called Reflections on the Revolution in Europe, and it traces all the demographic of the expanding Muslim population and so forth. And basically, the reason they adopted the dogma of multiculturalism was out of guilt of World War II and the Holocaust. And, they didn't have forums like the Internet now. So I think saying that we're sleeping like Europe is just absurd. I mean, this is the year 2012. We have websites like Jihad Watch with thousands of readers. And look at, even in Oklahoma, they banned Sharia law for pretty much no reason. I mean,
but wait a minute. Robert Spencer at Jihad Watch is completely demonized by the culture at large.
Oh, no, I understand. I agree that there's a problem with the mainstream media accepting it, but whether to say that there's just this total wool over the eyes, I think that's blatantly false. And to be honest, I think that's kind of a hyperbole that kind of discredits the anti-jihad movement because we have the Internet. I mean, I know we don't get attention.
But
on the
Jordan, when
media.
the Said girls were killed in Egypt in that honor killing, the media is terrified to even call it an honor killing or say the word Islam.
I agree, but you just changed what we're arguing about. I agree that's despicable, and I'm totally against that.
But
we're
it
talking
shows
about whether
that this
America
country
is sleeping
asleep.
like Europe slept.
But it's showing that our country is asleep when our media cannot even say the word Islam when discussing honor killings and terrorist acts.
But I'm talking about with regards to our immigration policy, not with regards to how the issue is being framed internationally, which I agree, it's despicable and unconscionable the way the media talks about it. But as far as whether we're just on the verge of just, like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, my God, Sharia law is inevitable, I think that's some real hyperbole, and I think it kind of discredits. There are enough really awful things about Islam.
Steve was not, to his defense, he wasn't saying tomorrow, but he's saying the way things are going, who knows what will happen in 10, 20 years if people like Spencer and Pamela Geller continue to be demonized and censored.
Well, those people have an audience, though. They don't get attention on the mainstream media, but when it comes to the ballot box or whatnot, those people are going to show up. So I don't think the problem's as acute as you make it about to be. I mean, obviously we have a problem with obfuscating about the horrors of Islam, but I just think there are enough legitimate concerns about Islam that we don't need to chase this
Jordan,
Sharia canard.
What inspired you to call this evening?
And also, just real quick, as far as the dynamics about outlawing Muslim immigrants and whatnot, there's a fascinating book called The Suicide of Reason by Lee Harris about how the dynamics between an embattled minority and whether if they really are out to get you, then how do you deal with it? So that's a really provocative book. But anyway,
thank you.
I just wanted to ask Eric, in addition to all the boilerplate hate mail and so forth, in the past week since last Tuesday on the show, what kind of significant things have happened, positive and negative? Are there any major events that are noteworthy besides just the boilerplate hate mail and so forth?
Yeah, the hate mail is a tiny percentage of the mail. The vast majority of emails that I receive, and I mean, I wake up to just, a email box every single morning is almost uniformly positive. The part that I'm most encouraged by are people who say, I'm not right wing. I'm kind of put off by the counter-jihad movement, but you're making a lot of sense, and I'm going to look into this. That's really encouraging to me.
Right. Yeah, it's encouraging to me too.
Yeah,
Jordan, thank you very much.
I agree. There are things that are said that I think they're too radical, they're too extreme, and it puts people off. And if we're trying to win a battle of ideas, I'm not recommending that we compromise the message in any way, but we kind of got to prioritize. And before we get into things like panicking about immigration, look, the battlefield is the media, and we just need to present a superior argument, and we need to win.
Right, and then the other dominoes will fall into place if just get that.
If
Jordan,
we prevail,
Jordan, thank you very much for calling in, and thank you for suggesting the books to our listeners and to us as well.
Okay, and I just want to tell Eric, I think his framing of it as a human rights issue rather than a partisan or national security issue is a novel approach. I think it's effective.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordan.
Thank you.
We are going to go to let's go to Steve, I want to give you a chance, but let's go to Mark from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, Jamie, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling in. Are you all riled up on the show for the show?
Well, listen, I've been listening intently to the debate, and I think that one thing that's being left out here, not completely. I mean, Stephen mentioned it, but, and even Eric mentioned it at the beginning of the discussion, we're not, we're getting pulled into this subterfuge to a certain extent of, accepting the premise that Islam is simply a religion like any other. It's not. It has a religious component to it, but it is fundamentally a socio-political, belief system, and Sharia law is fundamentally at odds with the U.S. Constitution and our way of life. So I think that to say that we cannot discriminate against a philosophy or an ideology that is actively opposed to our way of life is absurd.
But Mark, in the real world, what can we do as America, in terms of freedom, in terms of the First Amendment? What do you do? Islam is known to be a religion. That's how it's known right now.
Yeah, I understand. Obviously, it's known to be a religion right now. Has not been enough discussion. I mean, you, Robert, Pamela, David Horowitz have done yeoman's work along these lines, but the mass of the American public does not understand this. The media is against us, and when you talk to I only agree partially with Eric when he says that this is out of naivete. Yes, there's that element of ignorance, but there's also what you describe in your book, Jamie, that many of these leftists, and I know this from personal experience in the gay community for 30 years, they have a kinship with these types of philosophies that are destructive. And you're absolutely right about that. And I don't know. I get very upset when I hear people say, "Well, it's just something that people are just ignorant." It's not just ignorance.
Okay, thank you, Mark. 1 second. I'm going to let Steve jump in for a minute, and then we're going to let Eric throw his counterpunches. Go ahead, Stephen.
No, I agree with Mark. It's an ideology. It's something. It's values that are directly opposed to the American Constitution, and yet we're allowing it into the country. We're allowing it to spread. The president of CARE, one of the co-founders of CARE, said in Monterey, California, that Islam did not come to America to be equal to the religion, to be superior. And someone else at CARE said that he wouldn't mind seeing Sharia law become the law of the United States. I mean, they
but
spell
Mark
it
and
out themselves.
I don't necessarily think that Eric even necessarily disagrees with the alarm bells, but do you recognize that if we violate the principles on which America is based, that we could be doing more damage than good if we start violating civil liberties on this score?
I don't think that what we would be doing would be violent. And forgive me for interjecting here, but I mean, when you say violating civil liberties, you're again, Jamie, when you frame the issue that way, you're accepting the premise that Islam is a religion like any other religion, and you're not acknowledging the fact that what is being taught in these mosques is diametrically opposed to our system of our Western civilization.
Okay, 1 second. Eric, go ahead, my friend.
Anything that's being taught is, like I said, that's legal. We allow that. We allow free speech. It's that simple. You know, when we look at history just in the last 100 years, you can think of a number of dictators and think, well, how did they become dictators? Well, one of the things they started with, let's say Marcos, he suspended the Constitution. So once you start going down that road and making compromises to all of us, our civil liberties, it's hard to come back from there. You know, how do we get them back? At what point are hostilities over and we can have our civil liberties back again? It's a dangerous path to go down. History's shown us this time and time again. We have to fiercely protect the Constitution. So the way to win a battle of ideas is to identify where the battlefield is, and I'd say at this moment in time it's the media, and we need to present the superior argument, and we need to win. Anything else that's been proposed, I think, is alarmist, sort of desperate thinking, and desperate people do desperate things. Those kinds of, moves, I would say, are at least premature, but definitely unnecessary. We just need to win a battle of ideas, and I think it can be done.
Okay, let us go to a call from Florida. His name is George. I'm not sure if it's George W. Bush. Let's check. George, are you there?
Hi, how you doing?
Is this George W. Bush?
No.
Oh, okay. Do you have a question for Eric Allen Bell, sir?
Yes. I would like to know, because I've been hearing this argument from many of those on the right who states that America going to war with Iran will be in our best interest. I would like to know how.
Okay,
I mean, if we go to war with Iran for Israel, we go to war with Iran for Israel, don't you think our troops in the Middle East, whether in both Iraq and Afghanistan, are going to be not only in danger, but the price of oil will go up, and that could also crash our economy?
Okay, George, so you're saying that if Iran poses a nuclear threat to Israel, that's Israel's problem, and your belief is America should not get involved?
Essentially, I'm trying to ask a general question, though.
Okay.
Is it safe for us to actually engage in another war
with Iran? Okay, Eric, go ahead.
So I loathe war, and I think we should avoid war at all costs, first and foremost. That said, that's a bit of a misconception that Iran has Israel in the crosshairs only. Every Friday afternoon at Tehran University, in the presence of the supreme leader, Iranians get together and they chant, "Death to America, death to Israel," which they've been doing for probably since 1979. It's in their curriculum in their schools. It's built into their culture. It's built into their Shia theology. Death to America. They have said on countless occasions, America will not exist in the future. Make no mistake about it. Israel perceives America as an enemy, Iran perceives America as an enemy, and Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. So I would love it if we could solve that without war, but I think it's foolish to imagine that Iran's just minding their own business and just, that's really just between Iran and Israel. Iran's made it very clear since 1979 they perceive us as Satan, as their enemy, and they are looking for a way to build a nuclear bomb.
And Iran has already declared war on the United States, and that's why they're killing Americans in Afghanistan and in Iraq.
Where's the proof to all this? This sounds like paranoia. I mean, I would like hardcore evidence that they are building a bomb, for one, and for two, they want to come and attack us. The Soviet Union was a bigger threat to us than them.
Well, George, they've been announcing it. George, they've been announcing it from the rooftops. Go ahead, Eric.
If you want proof about the intentions of Iran, there's two places to get it. One, listen to what the president, Ahmadinejad, actually says. Listen to what the supreme leader actually says, and look at their actions. Do your own research. There is mounting evidence that Iran is funding on numerous fronts anyone who's fighting America. It's there.
No, I'm talking about the proof of a nuclear weapon to literally use against us, intercontinental missiles to use against us.
Well, I'm not sure they have missiles that can reach us, but they're attempting to build a nuclear weapon. Now, there's other ways to get a weapon to reach us. For example, put them in cargo ships and get them close off the shore of the East Coast and launch them from there.
Thank you. Stephen or Mark, do you have a quick comment in terms of what George is asking?
Well, I just want to say that the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency said last October that Iran is designing a nuclear warhead.
No, it didn't. I've read that report. It didn't say nothing like that. It said they suspect. Continue.
Well, suspect. These are experts in this kind of thing.
There is a consensus
but
many
they
experts
didn't say they had evidence for it. They say they just suspected.
Well, they've been working at this for quite a while now. They put a lot of money in the missile technology. That's the one area of their defenses that they have put in cooperation with North Korea. So there's something going on there, and whatever it is, it's not good.
Thank you very much for calling in, George. Please call again next week, okay, my friend?
Okay, I will.
Thank you. We have a couple of minutes left in the show. Eric, how about some of your thoughts at this stage in terms of your transition? You did a fantastic job on Michael Koren today. I encourage all of our listeners to go to Eric Allen Bell's page on Facebook, where he's posted his appearance on Michael Koren, the Arena show this evening. Eric, why don't you tell us quickly what you talked about on that program?
Well, just pretty much what we've talked about here. I mean, you summarized my journey. If you just go to Facebook.com/Eric Allen Bell, the YouTube videos there, and join my site. There's always a lively discussion on that wall. One thing I would like to point out is that in the culture of the left, there's not a whole lot of tolerance for a difference of point of view. If you're a liberal and you say you're pro-life, you might lose a lot of friends. There just isn't a lot of diversity. There is among, let's just use the counter-jihad movement as a perfect example. I think George Bush is one of the worst things that's ever happened to America. I was and continue to be very against the Iraq war. So when I'm talking about Iran as a real threat, you have to understand how hard that's been for me to come to terms with, because the last thing I want is another Iraq where they tell us there's weapons of mass destruction and there aren't. And, I think things are worse in Iraq today than they were under Saddam Hussein. And now we've got some American and British oil companies over there. So I don't think the American government is without its flaws.
I don't think the people who suffered in Hussein's Abu Ghraib would agree with you that things are worse today in Iraq than they were under Saddam.
I'm talking about a net effect, not just this against that. But my point, more importantly, Jamie, is that within you and I and Robert and other people, there are differences of opinion. We're not all singing off the same sheet of music politically, but we do agree on one fundamental fact, which is that jihad is a very serious, real, immediate threat, and something needs to be done about it.
And Eric, what happens if we do nothing?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. We're not doing enough, and we're seeing what's happening. They're infiltrating the media. They are using the I would say the left and the liberal establishment within academia to manufacture consent for really the media to voluntarily censor themselves and to get rid of any form of dissent. And it's working.
Very quickly, Mark, some final comments from you. Thank you for calling in tonight.
Well, yeah, I just think I mean, again, I commend Eric for his awakening, so to speak, and his willingness to consider these alternate ideas, because I absolutely would concur 100% that on the left there is this enforced effectively enforced unity of thought, in the sense that if you don't toe the line, you're pretty much excommunicated. And so I understand the kind of opposition and the kind of courage it takes for him to do what he's doing, and I appreciate it. And I just hope to see. I would hope that we could reach more folks like Eric, and you, as you said earlier, to to spread the message.
Mark, thank you very much for calling.
Thank you.
Stephen from Canada, your final Canadian thoughts.
Well, I don't think the battle is in the media. I think the battle is in the values of the countries that the Muslim immigrants come from. The values have to be changed there. Change their attitudes towards jihad, change their attitudes toward honor killing. They arrive here with these values. And that's why I say we have to screen very carefully the immigrants that come here, make sure that their values will correspond or won't clash with the values existing in the West. I don't think winning the media battle is going to make any difference. I just think of Steve Emerson's documentary from going into mosques in America in the early 90s. The things that were said there were just blood-curdling, like how these people even get into the country. All they want to do is destroy America. And how many of these mosques are there, and how many are we going to have in the future? But what I said, I think people should be concerned. Look at what's going to be America's be like in 50 years, and we continue in this direction.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Erica, some final thoughts on what the callers are saying before we make our final thoughts?
I got my first job in the entertainment business in 1990, and the Scientologists have a real grip on the entertainment business. And, part of their belief system has to do with a spaceship coming to rescue us all. And the fact is they're allowed to have wacky ideas. If you drive through Hollywood, you'll see buildings everywhere that say Scientology. But until they do something that's hurting other people, they're allowed to say what they want to say, and they're allowed to think what they want to think. And as a matter of fact, and anybody can go to rickross.com and look this up, there are numerous cases where the Scientologists have broken the law and have been prosecuted like any other group, probably more so than Muslims in America, actually. So we have a system in place to deal with that. I don't think we're going to change the views of people in Saudi Arabia or Iran. I think that the media, America is a media-driven culture, and if we want to change the psyche of America, the battlefield is the media.
Eric, just want to shake your hand in respect and admiration for the battle that you are fighting now and that you will be fighting. Tell us a little bit, very briefly, quickly, what some of your short-term plans are now in getting the truth out there and trying to break into the mainstream media.
I think in the short term I'll continue to blog and do whatever media appearances I'm invited onto. As a long term, I would like to complete a full-length version of Not Welcome and take a very hard, critical look at Islam in the world, Islam in America, and ask some of these tough questions and show a wide range of points of view. Should we deal with it on the front of immigration? Should we deal with it only in media and so forth? I'd like to make about 100-minute long documentary that really looks at this and not let it just stop with a documentary, but let that documentary become something of a movement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Grow from there.
Eric Allen Bell, thank you for joining the Jamie Glazov Show. And we are going to depart this evening with Madison Rising's song, Soldiers of America. Eric Allen Bell, we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody sister or brother, a father, son, daughter or mother, come on. They are the soldiers of America. They put their lives on the line, gave up their own right to freedom, so you could have yours and I could have mine, all right. They come